All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at a pretty incredible convergence of predictions from three of the most powerful men on Earth.
We're talking about Google's Sundar Pichai, Amazon's Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk. Now, it's incredibly rare to see these industry giants completely aligned on anything, but right now, they're seeing the exact same massive disruptive wave heading our way. They aren't bracing for some long drawn-out stagnation. No, they are entirely convinced we're standing right on the precipice of an era defined by explosive, unprecedented growth.
And they're aligned on three specific megatrends that are already reshaping civilization as we know it. First, artificial intelligence. Second, space exploration. And third, the ultimate destination, post-scarcity abundance. We're going to connect the dots across all three of these today.
Let's start with our first section here, the next wealth shift. We all know AI is a big deal, but let's explore the super strict timeline one of these CEOs puts on the actual wealth generation that's about to hit. So Google CEO Sundar Pichai strongly believes that right now, from 2026 to 2030, is the final 5-year window for regular individuals to build and invest. He views AI as the biggest tech shift since the internet. But his warning is crystal clear, guys. This golden era of democratization where you or I can just spin up an AI startup and capture massive wealth, it has an expiration date. After 2030, he predicts the sheer scale of compute and capital required will basically hand control over to a few consolidated giants.
But look at the massive gap in these projections. Venture capitalist Larry Goldberg thinks Pichai's 0.5% GDP boost is actually a dramatic underestimation. Now think about how huge the US economy is, right? Even a 0.5 percentage point is billions and billions of dollars. But Goldberg argues that predicting a 0.5% is completely missing the true scale of what's happening. He predicts a staggering 2% increase in growth by mid-next year. To him, the infrastructure companies are already reporting mind-boggling numbers, and that infrastructure is about to turn into raw, unprecedented production.
So what actually happens when that 2030 window closes? Well, Goldberg pushes back hard on Pichai's concentration theory. He argues the global market is simply too big for just 4 or 5 players to control. While Pichai sees a few mega monopolies running the show, Goldberg envisions 50, 100, or maybe even 1,000 massive titans globally. Yes, you absolutely have to be incredibly well-funded to compete, but the pie is growing so astronomically large that there's going to be room for dozens of new colossal empires, not just a handful.
To really ground this, Goldberg compares this step change in economic activity to the massive 19th century industrial booms. Look, this isn't just an incremental update, like, going from 4G to 5G. He argues it's literally more profound than the internal combustion engine, the telephone, and electricity combined. During those massive 19th century shifts, we saw incredible monopolies form, like Standard Oil and the Great Railroads. But crucially, everybody generally got wealthier and living standards skyrocketed across the board.
Moving on to Section 2, Superpowers and the Labor Shift. It's one thing to talk about macroeconomic GDP, but what happens when you actually sit down at your desk on a Monday morning?
Jeff Bezos entirely rejects the doomsday idea that AI just vaporizes jobs like software engineering or radiology. Instead, he uses this absolutely brilliant analogy. It's like trading a shovel for a bulldozer. Imagine you're digging a basement for your house with a shovel, and someone hands you the keys to a bulldozer. You don't panic about losing your shoveling job, right? No, you're thrilled. You've just been handed a superpower. Bezos argues AI is essentially a bulldozer for the mind, fundamentally expanding what a single human can accomplish in a day.
Because of these bulldozer-like tools, Bezos predicts a massive economic chain reaction. We're talking extreme productivity that will ultimately deflate the cost of core goods and entirely change our household labor dynamics. Think about it for a second. If we are producing that much more, the cost of absolute basics like food will actually fall. Bezos even predicts that this incredible efficiency will make single-earner households financially viable again. One partner could literally afford to drop out of the workforce, which ironically he predicts will lead to significant labor shortages down the line.
All right, Section 3, For-Profit over Philanthropy. Let's make a highly provocative pivot here and examine how these leaders view the moral value of their own empires.
Bezos argues that the fundamental value created by businesses, employing hundreds of thousands of people and providing essential services, completely dwarfs traditional charity. He points to the pandemic, noting how companies like Amazon served as an absolute lifeline for the public. And when he said this out loud, which, let's be honest, is a statement that usually goes completely against the grain of corporate PR, Elon Musk simply replied to it on social media with a single word: true. They both firmly believe that employing people, manufacturing goods, and advancing tech is the ultimate societal good. Building on Bezos's comments, Larry Goldberg completely agrees, putting forward a radical yet incredibly simple proposal to replace what he sees as a broken, overly complex nonprofit system. The idea discussed here is straightforward. If you make below the median income, you pay absolutely zero tax, none. For those above the median, it's a simplified flat tax, which completely eliminates the convoluted loopholes and charitable write-offs that define our current system.
The driving force behind this proposal is Goldberg's belief that many large nonprofits and massive hospital enterprises actually act as a convoluted drag on society, whereas for-profit companies are providing direct, tangible benefits. Goldberg argues that a massive amount of modern charity is just plagued by bloated management, where funds are essentially shuffled from one nonprofit to another, with executives taking a cut at every single step. He specifically calls out gigantic hospital systems that claim charitable status while providing just a negligible fraction of actual charity to patients.
Which brings us to our final section, the cost of utopia. As we look toward this post-scarcity abundance that these titans are actively building, we really have to examine Elon Musk's warning about our ultimate destination. When asked what the ideal future actually looks like, Musk outlines a stunning utopia powered by AI and robotics where poverty and disease are essentially eliminated forever. I mean, it sounds like heaven on earth, right? He envisions a world with amazing abundance for all, incredible medical care where literally anything can be cured, nobody is hungry, and human beings are completely free to spend their time however they choose.
However, Musk immediately pivots to a deeply philosophical concern regarding the human cost of maintaining a perfectly peaceful society. He kind of pauses and asks himself, if you get exactly what you wish for, does it inevitably turn into some sort of dystopian nightmare? Love and abundance? Sure, those are no-brainers, but absolute, total peace? That is exactly where Musk gets worried.
This creates a terrifying dystopian paradox. To eradicate all conflict, a governing body or an omnipresent AI might have to completely suppress human nature and individual freedom. Think about it. If humans are naturally prone to conflict and ambition, the only way to guarantee zero large-scale wars or interpersonal conflict might be to heavily control or even sedate the population. Musk suggests that perhaps we actually want a world with a little bit of conflict, because the alternative, absolute suppression to ensure peace, is terrifying.
Goldberg echoes this realism, emphasizing a really hard truth: disruption is the human condition. While living standards will soar across the board, the elimination of all relative scarcity is probably impossible. Look, we already live in an age of incredible abundance compared to the 19th century, yet millions still live below the poverty line. Goldberg doesn't believe a magic switch just gets flipped in 2030 where everyone is perfectly equal. The floor of poverty will be raised dramatically for sure, but wealth disparity and the natural conflict it brings will absolutely remain.
So as we conclude this explainer, we are left to ponder this massive question. In an age of AI superpowers, robotic labor, and seemingly infinite abundance, how do we find peace without losing our freedom? These three titans have made it absolutely clear that the technology is already here, and the wealth shift is already underway. We are getting the bulldozers. But how we build this new civilization and what we're actually willing to sacrifice for a perfect world, well, that's a question none of us can afford to ignore.